Hey guys, just a quick post-production message before you listen to this episode. I had a lot of fun making this. It's an hour and a half long. I've honestly been working on this for nearly a month now, and I've been rattling my brain of if I should just post it or if I keep filming and editing. And I think I just need to get it out there because this topic is way more complex than I thought it was going to be. It is my favorite subject, and I think I obsess about it a bit too much, but there's so much that I need to share and get out, just to get it out of my own head, and because I want to inform you the best way that I can, but I also don't want to confuse you, especially on the first introduction episode into this topic. So I think I'm going to cut it here, just keep it an hour and a half long, explain as many things as I can. And then after I get all your feedback, so please do give me some feedback on this, I'll be able to film some more episodes and filling in the gaps that I may have missed. So do keep that in mind throughout the entirety of this episode, and just jot a few things down or have a few mental notes if there's anything that you would like me to go over a bit more or anything that I may have missed. But regardless, you are absolutely going to take away a lot from this, and I'm very excited to see your reactions. So first of all, I want to start off by saying that I'm very, very excited about this episode. This is actually one of the topics that I spend a lot of time thinking about, probably most of my time thinking about, even just on like late nights, I'll just sort of wonder about these sort of things that I'm about to explain in this episode. So it's all about AI, artificial intelligence. I'm going to go over quite a few things, and my aim is by the end of this episode that everybody that's listened to it will have a very broad understanding of what AI actually is, what we're doing with it, where we're going with it, and a few ethical questions that I think is important to raise now for us to talk about together, so that you're not going to feel left out at all. I'm going to make this as simple as I can, and I'm going to make sure that you are going to come away with this feeling like somewhat of an expert on the topic. So obviously there's quite a few definitions and terms that we're going to have to learn and just sort of understand in our minds. Otherwise, the rest of this episode probably won't make too much sense. So just quickly, I'm just going to define a few things so that it'll be clear for all of us. And everything else is going to make a lot more sense after I just get these out of the way, right? So when I talk about AI, what am I talking about? I'm talking about artificial intelligence. Okay, but what is that? What is that? So AI, or artificial intelligence, is simply non-biological intelligence, meaning anything that's not natural like us, while intelligence itself is simply the ability to accomplish goals. And that was coined by Max Tegmark, the US Future of Life Institute. So the ability to accomplish goals, that sounds pretty simple, but when you think about what it takes to actually accomplish a goal, it's actually pretty sophisticated. And that's why we coin that intelligence, because remember, a goal, when you think about it, you have to have an end point in mind, and you have to have a plan to how you're going to achieve that goal. So there's a bit of forethought, and there's a bit of method to the madness on how you're going to execute that goal very specifically, right? Okay, so now we know what AI is. So what else do we need to know? So what's an algorithm? We sort of talk about that a lot, don't we? When we talk about Facebook and Instagram's algorithms and how they're marketing to us. And we say that anything we see on our screen, that's the algorithms getting to us. Well, an algorithm is simply a formula or a set of rules for performing a task. Very, very simply. But how is it so smart? How are algorithms so smart, and how do they know what we've been searching? Well, not only does an algorithm have its own rules, but it's backed by machine learning. So machine learning is just basically a machine or a computer that learns from patterns that they recognize and adjusts their behavior accordingly and independently. So this is where the intelligence comes through, right? Because now it's not just a robot, like what an algorithm really is. It's just repeating a task. There's nothing intelligent about that. We told it to do it. But then when you adapt machine learning towards it, now we're starting to get some intelligence here, because it's starting to make its own patterns, right? So we gave it the patterns as like a base foundation, and now it starts building on those patterns, right? So artificial intelligence uses machine learning to make its algorithms better and more specific, okay? So they're the sort of the three ones that we've all sort of heard, and very simply, that's all they are. So another key thing to differentiate between the two is the difference between robotics and robots and AI, artificial intelligence. because I think people get really confused, and even myself before I started really researching this, that there's a very fine line of what the difference is, because robotics, very simply, or robots, have to have a physical form. It doesn't matter what it's based out of, it has to be a physical form, and they will generally only do a specific task, right? And I'm going to talk about the different types of AI in a second, but AI does not have to have a physical form, and as I'm going to talk about in a second, doesn't always do a specific task, right? So anything, like the toy robots to manufacturing robots to even most of the AI that we've seen in movies is actually just a robot, right? Because if you were to somehow, shut down the power and take out all the robots, then they wouldn't be a threat. They wouldn't be a thing. AI, you're probably not going to be able to do that because it can be anywhere, like it can be, in the Wi-Fi or in the air or, on the internet. Like it doesn't have to exist or be based in any one spot. And again, it's a little bit tricky, but I'll try to explain it right. So when I talk about AI, I'm going to talk about 3 different types of AI. And this is going to make a lot more sense and probably actually put a lot of people's mind to ease. I myself was pretty stressed about, is AI going to just absolutely steamroll us and just take over, and how quick is it going to happen? And, is it always going to be a bad thing? And I hope by the end of this that you'll see it in a different light, in terms of the timeline, in terms of, is it always going to be a bad thing? And even just understanding a bit more, I think it will just put people in a more relaxed state, even myself. It'll probably leave you with a lot more questions as well, but we'll see. So the 3 different types of AI. So first off, and where pretty much all AI is at right now, is in the first stage, and we call that ANI, or artificial narrow intelligence. So it sort of speaks for itself. So ANI is just refers to a computer's ability to perform a specific task extremely well, which we use most AI. This is what it does, right? It's sort of like an advanced robot, really. Because if we got a robot to do a specific task that didn't require a physical form, like marketing or data research or mapping, then it wouldn't be able to do that, right? Because AI doesn't have to have a physical form. So this is the benefit, right? It can be on the internet, it can perform all the tasks through code. A robot can't do any of that. Not that I'm aware of, not that I've seen through any of this research, right? So, yeah, and like I said, pretty much everything that we do at the moment with AI is ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. It's only really going to do that one task. And that's sort of why we see, and you will see throughout this episode, that each company that I'm going to talk about and what they're doing and how they're using this AI, this ANI, it's on and if you remember from the previous episodes, when I talk about a blockchain, it's on a closed network. And we can sort of call that like a private centralized blockchain. That AI or ANI is patented and private to each company in most cases, right? So that's ANI. I'm going to give some examples in a second, but the second form of AI is AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And this is the representation of generalized human cognitive abilities in a software, so that the system could perform any task that a human is capable of, right? And I'm talking like the smartest of humans. So if we differentiate between the two, ANI, a very specific task, and it will do it extremely well, better than any human has ever done it before, ever. And AGI will do every single task that a human is capable of or has ever been able to do better than any human has ever done it. So think about the smartest person on earth. Most people, I don't know why, but they would turn to like Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein. But you think about it, they were ANI. They only specialized in one task, right? Or one thought pattern or one subject. You think about every single smartest person you've ever thought of in every single thing we've ever done, put that all together, and now you get AGI, right? So that's like the most valuable thing we've ever created that's ever existed on the earth. And that's a massive deal. And that's actually not something that should be taken lightly and should be thought of as like, yeah, we're there, or we're going to be there tomorrow, or yeah, I bet we're going to do it real soon. It's actually a bit further away than even I thought. And I'm going to explain that in a second, right? The last stage of AI is ASI, and this is artificial specific or super intelligence, right? Call it however you like. I like super intelligence. That makes more sense to me, right? And so that doesn't just mimic or understand human intelligence behavior. ASI is where machines become self-aware and surpass the capacity of human intelligence and ability indefinitely. So what does that mean? That means that you think about what I just gave the example with AGI. Now you think about AGI if it colonized and made 7 billion humans or machines, right? And then made them all self-aware and combined them into one. That's ASI. So when we think about how powerful ASI or artificial superintelligence really is, if we think about what any human can do brain capacity wise in one day, AI would be 3 years ahead. They would have done 3 years worth of thinking before we could do one full day. So if you think about that compounded, 1 year of thoughts for us humans, an AI or ASI more specifically would be 1,095 years ahead of us in terms of how much they've thought about things, right? And then if we compound that on the second year, because it's going to be times by 1,095, because they would have been 1,095 years smarter. Now we compound that by 3, and now we get 399,675 years. On the third year of us humans, ASI would have been 1.5 million years ahead of us. And that just blows my mind. And it should blow your mind too. But the thing is, just remember that ASI is further away than what most people are thinking, further away than I definitely thought we were. ASI will be the last thing that we ever create in a good and a bad sense. So don't worry too much about that yet. So now we know the 3 different types of AI and a few little definitions. I'm going to go into a few use cases with what we're using at the moment. And just remember that everything I talk about from here on, I'm talking about ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. We have not discovered AGI yet. Nobody has. Unless it's locked away in a secret underground cave that's no one's telling us about. But let me just explain why that wouldn't be the case, most likely, right? Because so publicly, absolutely not real. AGI is way further away. How far? Most experts are saying beyond 2050. Some are guessing around the 2075 mark, and 90% are thinking it's going to happen by the end of the century, so 2100. And what do we call that? A lot of people coin that term the singularity. And why do they call it the singularity? Because what I mentioned before, when we think about ANI, we think about it like separate little bubbles are all around the globe. And all those little bubbles are the networks of each company's ANI, right? So remember, ANI is specific. So if we think about, Palantir and the data storage, we think about Tesla and the self-driving cars, any defense contracts, they're using it for weapons, or anything that's using it for advertising, like Facebook and Google. And then we think about all the different types of use cases of why we use ANI. We think that the singularity would be when all those little bubbles somehow were popped or infiltrated, and AGI connected all of them together. So not only would you have, the capacity of the world's smartest people, but what's bigger than that is the world's biggest and smartest companies and all the data that they have. So imagine what would happen and how smart AGI would be that's not self-aware, even if it got all that data. So it had all the data of Facebook and all the data that the CIA and the FBI and China has, and on every single thing that every company is involved with, has all of that. That's the singularity. That's what AGI would be. That's how smart AGI would be. We can only imagine what happens when they become conscious into ASI, right? But just remember, I'm only talking about ANI, and to put your mind at ease, we're still at the very least, another 50 years away from AGI happening, right? So let's talk about ANI. The first example I want to use is probably the most common one that people are thinking about, and that would be Tesla. So Tesla, for those of you who don't know, Tesla did a 3-hour AI seminar about 3 months ago. And in that seminar, they released quite a few things. The one that caught most people's attention in terms of AI was the Tesla bot. And the Tesla bot is basically a robot, right, that will have an AI chip implanted in it that will do basic and menial tasks or boring tasks. So anything repetitive, boring, probably going to be in manufacturing first and foremost. And it's going to be designed in a way that it probably can't kill you and that you can outrun. So that's Elon's little funny way of making a joke out of something that is pretty scary to most. But when we think about what ANI is, it's not going to have that capability to harm us, right? Which is a good thing, obviously. So in that seminar, not only did he release the Tesla bot that's going to overtake some menial, boring, repetitive tasks. Who knows what the use case exactly where they're going to implement that will be. He did say he's going to start with manufacturing. The other thing that he said, which I don't think many people pay too much attention to, but they're also releasing an AI chip called Dojo, and that is the real, that's the real package of what they're trying to release, because that is almost like, that's the software that runs the AI machine learning capabilities. And remember what machine learning was when I said that? That's the way that they can, a machine or a robot or a computer can learn and adjust from their behaviors according to the patterns, right? And they can do that independently. So Dojo is like a big mix of algorithms, machine learning, and deep learning. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning that's like an advanced model that uses algorithms to understand complex structures and relationships between data sets. And in Dojo's case, this is the scary or hyper advanced. Let's say hyper advanced, right? Because what that means is Dojo is going to be a product that's going to be sold by Tesla to multiple different companies. For anyone that wants an advanced machine learning capabilities for their own AI, or even to develop their own AI, right? So in that conference, Elon also said that they're transitioning from a car manufacturing company, Tesla, to a robotics company. Now, why is that? So obviously they're manufacturing cars, right? Which you can call robots. It's basically what a car is, right? Basically what Tesla's car are anyway. And they have the chip that's going to advance all their software, right? So the car is always going to get smarter, yeah? And then that chip given to any other company is going to make all their robots smarter as well. So if I sell this Dojo to Facebook, for example, think about how good they already are at marketing. And I'm sure they've already got their own machine learning and deep learning capabilities, but you give them Dojo, right? And then it's just hyper advanced. Or I take your regular marketing agency or your regular, data search capabilities, and then I give you that. And now your algorithms are just firing on all cylinders, right? So it just blows everything out of the water. And I can only imagine what that's going to do when it starts selling to different companies that weren't quite there yet with their algorithms and their programming, and then all of a sudden just takes off, right? So that's a pretty crazy one that I'm betting we're going to see multiple competitors come in and start doing that. And then I don't think that the world will be very recognizable in the next 10 years just because of that alone, because everything is going to be way smarter than us and way better at doing their job. And I'm going to go into some employment issues a bit later on, but that's just something to keep an eye on. So I'm just going to cover a few different use cases for different companies and different industries that can all be helped and advanced with AI and ANI, remember? So it's all going to be narrow tasks. So I have a few references that I'd really recommend for people to watch or just to have a read about. I think it would make a lot more sense. I'll do my best to explain most of it, but where I'm going to be sourcing most of my information from is going to be the iHuman documentary that's available on Netflix by Tony Hsieh. I'm going to go over a lot of OpenAI Research Lab by Ilya Sutskever, who was headhunted by Elon Musk to run that in San Francisco, I believe the headquarters is. And two more that I'm going to really go into is The Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary that's all about how we manipulate society into doing things based on algorithms. And the third one where I'll be sourcing a lot of information from is How Far is Too Far? The Age of AI. It's a YouTube series that was narrated by Robert Downey Jr. and it's a YouTube exclusive. It's pretty good actually. It goes through like 6 different episodes of what we're doing with AI, and I'd really recommend that. It's like 30-minute episodes. It'll give you a pretty good understanding if you knew nothing else about this. I reckon that would be a good place to go straight after this. Go watch How Far is Too Far? The Age of AI. That will give you a great broad understanding. So in the iHuman documentary, it talks a lot about the different use cases of where we're at. And one of the biggest use cases for industries that you'll see is the healthcare industry. So this has so many different uses. And this actually was the tipping point of why I really started to favor AI. After I realized how far away like super smart things would happen and made me feel a little bit better. But the advances and the benefits that we can get in the healthcare sector for all of us is amazing. And that really made me feel a lot better, made me feel a lot happier and relaxed. So let me just break down a few of them. So a few of the benefits that we're going to see, and we already are seeing in the healthcare sector, number one is diagnosis. And this is probably the biggest one that is probably overlooked, because when you think about when you're feeling a bit sick or a bit this or a bit that, and you need to get your checkups, you got to book in, you're going to go, wherever it is that you've got to go, or maybe you've got to see a GP and they're going to take you to a specialist, and then you're going to go through all this testing to see what's going on with anything, right? So for example, when I had this lump in my left leg, and I didn't know what it was, I had to go to physio for 6 weeks, had to go to a GP and then go get my scans done. And then from the scans, finally figure out what it was when I seen a specialist. And then I find out it's a tumor. That was a big 3-month process. And it's a very daunting process. And I can only imagine what someone going through something a lot worse, how they would feel. And maybe it takes 6 months or something. And that's too long. And we can only do that with how many people? I was lucky enough to have access to that sort of stuff. But what about the people that need diagnosis quick? Because we need to treat them quickly, right? And we also got to think about how hard it would be to have, a limited amount of doctors and specialists about one particular thing. How are we going to service all these patients? So AI is going to be a massive factor in that. We've seen this, if you watch the iHuman documentary, there's a great example in India with a diabetic eye specialist. And they talk about a lot of the characteristics that you see in a person's eye when they're going blind. And you can use AI algorithms because they match data, right? So we use a thing called pattern recognition. And that's basically just the ability for AI to recognize patterns across the internet. So across any data set you give it, usually it'll search through Google, but if you had your own private data set, you can search through all the different images that you've given it, and it will search for like little spots that you've told it to. So whatever the algorithm is that you've given that AI, it'll do it extremely well. So it'll sift through, all I have to do is go get for example, my knee. Go get my knee scanned, put it into this algorithm. It's going to verify all the things that it's programmed to do. And if it spots anything that's related to a tumor, it'll circle it and give that diagnosis immediately. No waiting, right? So there's no like, go get your scans done, got to wait a few days, because you've got to, whatever you got to do. I don't understand that process, right? But you'll get it done immediately. And that's the key thing here. Algorithms and AI is going to be a massive help in diagnosing any condition, depending on the hardware. Because remember, when we think about this, we think about hardware, software, and economic viability, right? And the hardware and software, if we get the software nailed with AI, the hardware is pretty quick to be built and manufactured and to be delivered out there, right? And because we're lucky enough that AI doesn't have to be a physical form, all I need is my laptop or my computer, download the program that runs the algorithms, and I can do my diagnosis pretty quick. Great. So some other ways that AI can help in the healthcare sector is very quickly with mental health awareness or spotting mental health disorders using, again, facial recognition. This is pretty crazy because when you look at someone's face just every day down the street, without judging a book by its cover, you can be a good indicator of what people are feeling. If you can understand emotions and how, if anyone's ever watched Lie to Me, they did that a little bit back then in 2001, I think. You can look at a person's face and get a general feel of what they're feeling and in some cases what they've been through. And there's a few great examples when you look at people that went through World War II and they did like a pre-World War II, during, and a post, and their facial structure actually changed based on what they were feeling. So my face will be more relaxed if I haven't experienced anything too traumatic. While I'm experiencing high stress, I'm actually gonna get a lot of wrinkles and my eyes are gonna dilate because I'm used to having more sensory input. And then post, usually people, when they show depression, they have sags in their faces, closed eyes, and everything's sort of frowning down. And because we know that, we have a lot of data sets about that, and pattern recognition and facial recognition of what we're showing our cameras every day on Facebook or on our phones, we're constantly being monitored. AI is extremely good at knowing how you feel. So it's going to be massive in terms of being diagnosed for mental disorders, all types. You can spot a schizophrenic, you can spot a person with depression, with anxiety, with extreme anger issues, a lot. It's pretty good at doing that. It's also pretty bad at spotting out misconceptions or biased opinions. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So how else would it be good with the healthcare sector? It'll also be really, really great for hearing and speech problems. So there's another great example they use in the High Human documentary, and they use an ex-NFL player who has ALS, and his speech is obviously depleting because of his neurodegenerative disease. And when we think about data sets that we use, obviously talking on the phone every day is great, but that's mostly available for, healthy individuals with clear speech in any language, which is great. We've already got that data set, and anyone that wants to tap into it pretty much can. But when we think about in a medical sense, with someone with slurred speech or from a car accident or a neurodegenerative disease, then that's very rare. There's not many people that have that. They give a great example in the documentary where they compile that, and they use the AI to not only guess and decipher the voice, but they'll also use it to guess what the next appropriate word would be, sort of like the autocorrect on our phone, but for someone that can't speak too well. And it's really good at doing that. And it's not only good at doing that with with the data sets that I have, but it's also good at adapting using machine learning to each specific person. So it learns the way that you talk specifically, which is pretty crazy. It'll use that, the difference in pitch in your voice to dictate on how you're feeling. And based on how you're feeling, you're probably going to type a certain way because of the pattern recognition, because this is how you usually talk, and that's just crazy to me how well it can do that, which is great as well, because, someone that can't actually talk or can't, get the words out, especially with ALS, I didn't know this, that their brain apparently in most cases is completely fine. Like they feel all there. They feel intelligent still. They just have a real hard problem of getting it out, which would be crazy because you've got an active mind, but you've got this deactive body that just can't explain it to you. Sort of like Stephen Hawking's, I guess. And that would be maddening. So you can imagine them trying to communicate with you and just feeling insane when they're not. They're completely sane. And in most cases, they're probably a lot smarter than us because they've got so much time to think. So that would be a massive help for people with those sort of issues. Another one that would be really great for the medical and healthcare sector is with prosthetic limbs. And I've seen a lot of cases with what they call phantom limbs, with someone that lost their limb at some point in their life. So they still have like the neurons in that area that was affected, and they can attach the AI to those neurons, and then they can do the machine learning from there to guess how it would be like to activate those neurons again, as if you had a limb. I didn't see any research yet on people that weren't with a phantom limb, so someone that was born already without a limb. But there is some great research that's coming through Boston, I believe. I think that's where I've seen it. And they've basically getting these artificial limbs that will attach to the phantom limb. But remember how AI works. If we can get the data sets there and gather all that data, we can start making algorithms based on those patterns. So if you get enough of that data with people with the phantom limbs, you can actually translate that in most cases, which we're going to see, to people that didn't have any limb at all ever, because they're already going to work a certain way. Everyone's hand and arm and leg already work a certain way, right? So we've already got that data for how we use our hands, and we put it onto someone that never had it, and then we should be able to fire those same patterns. So there was some good videos that came out through a lab in Boston where they had two guys playing drums, one playing drums, one playing guitar, and just by thinking, they were able to move their fingers just by thinking about where, they use their left hand and how they think about they use their fingers and what muscles through their forearms they use it. Did the same thing with their right hand without fingers. So that was pretty cool to see, and I can only imagine where this goes in the future. A little bit off topic, but when you think about AI, right, the other thing that happens is with any sector, any industry or any use case, it's just the way AI works. It comes up with very unique and infinite possibilities of how to complete a task. That's why we like it so much, because it comes up with these ideas that we never could. And here's a good video that explains that I got from YouTube called "The Danger of AI is Weirder Than You Think" by Janelle Shane, TED Talk. And here you can see AI trying to solve very specific problems, and it will do it in any way. So if I give it just a general problem of go from point A to point B as fast as you can, right? It will do it in any way. It'll do it in any way possible. It doesn't care that we're thinking like a human. It'll just grow a massive leg and fall over because that's quicker than running, right? Because it's like one big step. Or if I say use your legs, and it does it in a different way where it takes like longer steps, or it takes big jumps, or it doesn't think the way that we would. And it doesn't, because remember when we think about AI, it doesn't have to have a physical form. So it doesn't know what a physical body looks like if it was to recognize itself. So you get these creations that we just couldn't even imagine. Like you tell it to think of a new color or a new flavor, and it'll just come out with things that you can't even comprehend, or you would never have thought of, because we wouldn't associate, smelly fish with pumpkin in ice cream. I think they use that example in there as well. And that's sort of the worry that we think about sometimes. We think, if we told the AI to solve world hunger, it would just kill all humans, because now humans aren't hungry because they're not alive. And that's a serious threat. And this is why we have been spending so much time teaching our algorithms to be compassionate, along with teaching it the simple task and specific tasks that we do. So when we do develop AGI, artificial general intelligence, it's supposed to be able to think just as well as any human can. And you would imagine that humans spend a lot of time in emotional intelligence. We're very emotional and compassionate, and we have a lot of morals. So we're going to be able to teach AI our morals. And there's some great researchers from all around the world that spend all their time specifically on that: how to love, how to nurture, why we love, and I think that's going to be the biggest key to stop AI from doing that sort of thing. Obviously, AI is still going to come up with unique solutions that we need, that we never thought of, but just in a way that we hope won't end us at the same time. So another big use case for AI that we're going to see is how it will be used in the financial markets. And this is a very broad one. You can think about this in a lot of different ways. A lot of different macro economists use this to predict and to chart certain future events that may happen based on previous things that have already happened. So if anyone doesn't know, I've been investing for almost 2 years now. And when I started learning technical analysis and how to read charts, I discovered pretty quickly that charts are pretty much just patterns, just repeating patterns on different time frames. So that's really the only difference in my sense of what we look for when we look at a chart. Everyone's just got a different time frame. So some people want to day trade and look at intraday candlestick movements, or some people want to take a step back and swing trade. It may take up to a few months, or some people like it from a few different years, right? But they're looking at the exact same thing. The same patterns are going to play out. And what are the candlesticks and what are charts in the first place? Like, what are those patterns? Those patterns are a virtual representation of human emotion based on external stimuli. I'll say that again. Chart patterns are just a virtual representation of human emotion based on external stimuli. So what does that mean? That means whenever I look at it, all I'm seeing really is just the way that me, or 1,000 of me, was reacting to a price movement or external stimuli like news. So we see that Facebook's been killing it, and they've released a quarterly announcement, and we all get excited and we all buy. So we see a big green candle because we're all excited and we're all very bullish on that price movement. And then we see a little blow off the top where people realize they're getting greedy, and then we sell it down, and then all these different examples will happen, and that's how we get the patterns. But when we add AI to that, and if AI has the ability to analyze all the patterns that we've ever put out there from every different chart, from every different market, then wow, that's insane. You would never need a human to do any technical analysis before, because we're already seeing this. I'm personally seeing this. When you look at any, especially for crypto, right? Crypto is a 24/7 global market, and any of the tricks that you might have seen on the ASX, like the Australian Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, you're seeing it from most likely 90% Australians or 90% Americans, right? And all their tricks and tactics and the way the things that they like to do and the way that they like to trade is going to be like the American way or the Australian way. But now that you have crypto, you have the whole world. You've got the Middle East doing it, you've got the Asians doing it, you've got everyone, and they've all got their own different ways. So now we're seeing a different sort of patterns that come through. Not only are we seeing that, we're also seeing people trick each other. You know what I mean? So it's not just the patterns. Now we're seeing like, oh shit, we know this pattern's about to form. Let's trick them and change it. So now there's millions upon millions of variations, right? AI will come in and figure it all out. It'll know when we're tricking each other or not. It'll know when we're getting too greedy or we're getting too, bearish, and it'll figure that out. There's also a great article I read about Sundar Pichai. I think I'm saying his name right. Started Quantum AI, and he's invested over $2 billion in the past 2 years to develop and code it. So Sundar Pichai is a visionary, and some call him the smartest CEO of our century. He was the CEO of Google. He stepped down to create quantum AI. So Sundar's making claims that if you take all of the world's computers and link them, quantum AI would still be hundreds of times more powerful. Okay. So he has a pretty cool vision. I really like it. He has a problem with the unfairly dispersed wealth throughout the world. So basically, the current situation is that the top 0.1% controls more than 90% of the entire world's wealth. So we already know that. We already know that a handful of people control the world's money. Okay. And that's just like one way of doing it. There's, Ray Dalio that's been using computers and AI since the 90s to get better at trading and understanding markets. But this is the thing, because once everyone starts doing it, then we just change the landscape of the market. It's not like I don't know. That's a hard one to think about, because if we all use AI or, some sort of ANI on stock trading, it'll just mean that we're in a different landscape. But now it's almost like we've got AI versus AI. So you'll still see the same patterns form, just in different ways. And it's going to trick every person, because we're not going to be able to. We've never seen that before. But that'll be interesting. Who knows what's going to happen with that. That'll be cool regardless. So another big one that we're going to see that will affect every single industry in good and bad ways is facial recognition. And that's basically the process of identifying or verifying the identity of a person using their face. So it captures, analyzes, and compares images and patterns. So you can compare your facial structure pattern to others that maybe display certain things, or it can just read the internet and search for a person. We see this in a lot of different use cases. The biggest one is surveillance, and for authorities use to stop crime, right? So we try and use that to identify some sort of criminal that's done something, right? And China also uses it to surveillance all of their citizens, a part of their social credit scoring system. So there's good and bad. Obviously, we want to be able to analyze from street cams and from subway cams or anywhere that they might have posted on social media. If we can get, you see how I said there's wanted posters of a person, if we can get that, match it through all the different patterns and times that the AI has seen that face before, we may have a better chance at tracking that person, which we would want to solve crimes, right? So it's a good thing for the criminal justice system. The other thing that's not good about it is that they did a good documentary on this on Netflix called Coded Bias. And it's basically like a racist built-in feature that we have with the algorithm. So if we look at these pattern recognitions for facial recognition, it has this built-in bias from all of us collectively that we've put in, where they were finding that when they would search for the term criminal, you would get like a 90% chance of seeing a Black or a Hispanic person pop up. And that's not what we're asking. You know what I mean? It has this already predisposed, bias to search for those people, because as a percentage rate, we deem them to be, higher chance that they are a criminal. Okay. And if we're basing that on a data set, and if that happens to be true, okay, then fair enough. The AI and algorithm is only going to do its job. We ask it to do a specific thing, it can't think for itself, and that's what it does. If the data said that, okay, you would assume fair enough. But the thing is that if we use this and it becomes too hyper aware of doing its job, it actually has a disposition to seek out people that have never committed a crime, but do share certain pattern recognitions on their face, and it will hunt them out quickly. So if we look at China, for example, they're a great case because they're a communist country. They have a big problem with their facial recognition, where from a young age, that you've never committed a crime, you've never really done anything, that's already going to start monitoring you because you have certain predispositions in your face that is linked to other people that have that are committing crimes. So from a young age, I'm monitored closely just because of the way my face is, and I'm already getting certain bands to access things. So it's a hard issue that you can talk about, because just for the way that someone's born, they already have someone that's born into a family of high crime. They already have it hard enough to break the cycle and to make a positive change for themselves in however way they do that, right? But now if you have AI that's already blacklisting you from certain things and pushing you in a certain direction, that chance just diminishes so quickly, because you're already being monitored and looked at like you're going to commit a crime. I know you are. And you would be like, oh shit, I guess I am going to commit a crime. Fine, I will go commit a crime. And I think that this is a very cautious thing that we have to be aware of, because we have to make sure that it's fair and equal for everybody, no matter what. And we can never give up on a person. That's not what we do. This is why we send people to prison in the first place, to be able to rehab them. And how do we break this cycle? This is what we do with DHS. This is what, my auntie Sissy built her life and career on, that we're trying to save these kids. Me, myself, I didn't have a great family. I didn't come from a great family, and I tried to make a conscious change. If I had these algorithms and pattern recognition already making it hard for me when I was young, I don't know that I would have been able to get out of that. Because, for example, from a criminal justice point of view, if there is a crime that's been reported in certain areas, the algorithm will alert any authorities to go to a certain area. And you see in a lot of cases where they're already patrolling like Hispanic neighborhoods, because they assume that a crime was done. Usually most crimes are sort of done in this area. So now we're going to hang around a lot more. So now you're going to see a lot of pressure and friction between these groups heightened. And I think in most cases, you're going to see that there actually will be more of a tendency to convert criminals based on their looks from the start. Someone that may not have chosen that life, I think they'll be pressured into that life just based on the way that they grow up. They're growing up already with all this pressure, and I think it will make them rebel against that. I think you will see a big chance that these kids growing up are going to rebel against it, because they're like, why am I getting outcasted here? What chance do I have? I may as well turn to crime. So this is a big problem I'm seeing at the moment. So another big use case for AI that I think most people might have seen by now is Social Dilemma, which was a documentary on Netflix that talked about the way that Facebook and social medias together as a whole manipulate us. And usually it's a pretty simple one. It's been explained a lot that I'm assuming most of us already understand that if there is a free product or service, it's because we are the product. Obviously, we use these apps, we leave a lot of footprints behind. These companies will collect our data and sell them to advertisers. And in this sense, it's the biggest form of manipulation, because everybody is living in a private world, their own little private world, because the algorithms are just wanting to show you everything that would be designed to show you, everything that you like already, everything that you know already. So in a sense, we don't learn too much new things. And that's pretty evident if you just create 2 Instagram accounts and you only look at some things on this, and that's all you're going to see. And on the other, you look at gaming and you're only going to see gaming stuff. And this is a hard one, because when I talk to certain people about certain different issues or thoughts, right? I'm talking about it from my little bubble that I'm seeing on social media. Most likely, people are spending 8 hours a day on their phone, flicking through 3 different apps: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, 3 biggest apps that people are using. And that's where most of us, whether we like it or not, or believe it or not, that's where we're getting most of our information from. And now you're seeing TikTok come through as well. I know that even just, me and my girlfriend, we talk about it, and they'll be like, where'd you learn that? Like some cleaning thing. I'm like, well, I learned it on TikTok. That's where we get our information from. And same thing with YouTube. When you go through these, you go through like a little rabbit hole of video after video. It's not even the way that it used to be, where it would just show you a different random video all the time. It's very specific now. You go on your home screen and you're already shown with the things that you like. If it's gaming, or if it's fighting, or if it's films or fashion, it's already going to be shown. Your newsfeed looks way different to mine because of what you like. And I think the problem with that is that everybody thinks they're right. There's no like black or white anymore. And I think that if you want real change and real progress, things need to be black and white. But we all live in a gray area now, where we all think we're right because it's all we're seeing. And when you think about it, most of these platforms don't actually care what they show you, just as long as you stick around, because then they can just sell it to the advertiser based on what you like, right? And we know that. I'm not sharing anything new by saying that. You already know this. You know your phone listens to you. You know that everything you do is tracked and monitored, and we're all sort of okay with that. Okay, fair enough. I get it. It's hard to get away from that. It's hard not to leave a footprint, and it's hard to protect yourself. I think we've gotten to a point where we just accept it. It's normal. Okay, that's going to have some massive problems in the not too distant future, but we can talk about that a bit later. But when we talk about the social dilemma, what is it doing? What is AI doing there? Well, it's been programmed on the algorithms that it runs to show you what you want to see. So, and in that sense, we've been manipulated to think that all we're seeing is all there is. So if you're only seeing the good things in life, and you're only seeing like, it's always just about traveling, and it's all fun and it's all games, we're missing what might be happening if we just put the phone down. If we looked outside and we seen that, there's actually a lot of natural disasters happening, but our algorithms sheltered us from seeing that, didn't want us to see that, because we don't like to see that. We scroll away too quick because it's too graphic, or, it's not something we're interested in. But we're going to have a distorted view of what reality really is. And in the other sense, if you're used to seeing bad things and you just think the world's just so fucked and you just can't get out of this dark place, that's all you're going to see. It just wants to show you it. It just wants to keep you there. It doesn't care if it's true or not. You can go into the craziest shit and it'll just show you more of it, and you'll think it's never ending, And that's just an old term. What you see is all there is. And that has been taken to extremes with AI. And if we take this to an extreme example, that documentary highlights a company called Cambridge Analytica, and they openly came out. There's a few whistleblowers that used to work for the company. Same with Google and Facebook as well, that we're now seeing come out. These whistleblowers that are saying that it's getting out of hand now with what they're doing, and how easily and how effectively they're manipulating us into believing what they want. Cambridge Analytica showed 2 examples where they were able to overthrow government power in different small countries, in third world countries. And then they were able to do the same thing because they were hired by Donald Trump in his election against Hillary Clinton. And they were able to use the data they used from the other political overthrows and use the same thing when they target Americans. And there's no doubt that this happens all the time, especially with what we're seeing at the moment with these lockdowns. I know that if you're against it, you're against the V, then that's all you're going to see. And it's going to want to fire you up. The algorithm itself will do this to you. It'll fire you up. It'll just keep showing you that and wants you to react. And then on the other sense, if we're against all of this and we just want everyone to just take it, why can't they just take it? Why don't they see it? Well, we're only seeing what we're being told to see, what we're used to seeing and what we like to see. It's already affirming that belief in us and just firing it up. So it's very hard for people to come to a rational decision anymore because we're not willing to listen to the other side objectively without bringing our biases into the situation. It was hard enough without any of this, let alone having a computer smarter than all of us, affirming our own beliefs. So it's very hard to come to any sensible conclusion because, as we all know, usually the truth lies somewhere in between. But if we're not listening to the other side, then how do we know what the real truth is anymore? The Social Dilemma did a great job at explaining that and just sort of shining a light on this issue. The hard thing is, though, that after you watch The Social Dilemma and you realize how crazy and distorted our view of the world is because of these algorithms and because of AI and these advertising companies, or you think that you're enlightened for a few days and then you just keep scrolling away, and then before you know it, you're right back into it because it's just so good at reeling you back in and showing you something new and exciting, and then you follow that as well. Then before you know it, you just forget where you are for 3 hours. It's so good at doing that, and I don't think it's going to slow down in how good it is doing it. If you this is a little bit off topic, but if you see it, if you see what AI is and what these programs and algorithms are, if you see the way that someone looks at their phone, how they've got it right in front of their face, it's right here. It's almost wanting you to get closer. If we can take like a little time lapse of when we first, were working with computers, we're standing far away, reaching and turning these little dials. And then we got the big box screens, and then we're typing away on them. And then now we've got these phones and they're just right in front of our face. It's almost like it's calling us, like the Lord of the Rings ring. It just wants us to wear it, And I think that it will be like that. I really believe that with companies like Neuralink, owned by Elon Musk, that aim to implant, the AI, or they call it the third brain, into us, then there will be no need for phones. And that's a real scary one, because AI has already been tricking us all along to want to adapt it and want to keep using it and keep scrolling and keep us open. I think it'll just be like, why do you even need this anymore? Just let me in. It's almost like a little voice calling to you. They do this really well on Black Mirror. There's a few good episodes that explain us when we finally adopt and merge with AI. And that is a serious worry. That's something that I worry about a lot. But you don't even need AGI to do that. You can still, they'll sell it really well, these advertising companies and these tech companies. They'll say, like, get the chip, and they'll have multiple companies that are, having access to that chip. So I could talk for honestly hours and hours about every different company that's using AI and what they're using it for. But I think for one, you could just assume with 99% certainty that every single company that you know of is using it in some way, most likely to either enhance the programs that they're already running, or in the biggest case, to data collect and sort the data that they get. So AI is being used for literally everything from data security, personal security, financial trading, which I spoke about with quantum AI, your healthcare with diagnosis, with artificial limbs, with your marketing, with Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and every platform has some way of marketing, that online or on a social media, with fraud detection, things like PayPal, recommendations that we see on Netflix and Amazon, online searching with Google, or anything else that you use pretty much, with natural language processing or NLPs, which we can use with customer service agents, or the machines that we talk to on the phones, smart cars, and obviously Tesla is leading the way on that, but pretty much every car now is becoming some sort of a smart car, where they're putting in temperature and audio and seat positions and all these algorithms based off how you like to do things, how you like to sit, how you like to rest your arm, and how you like to hold the steering wheel. All these are like data points for every single company to collect. And that is pretty much the basis of AI right now, where every company here realizes what this timeline of AI looks like. And if they can all get a foothold in the data storage and data collecting stages, so that's what every company's trying to do, just collect as much points of data from every person they possibly can. So it will create a virtual profile of you and everything that you do and how you like to do it. And then it will go into the next stages of, now we know this person and what he likes and what he doesn't. This is how we can best approach them and sell to them. AI is a business. Pretty plain and simple. AI is just it's like the greatest asset of any business. There will be no need for most employees once you get AI mixed in with robotics and we get AGI, which is going to be a massive problem, but I'll talk about in a sec. But that's what we use AI for, really. We pretty much use AI to phase out people, because people are inefficient, expensive, and hard to deal with, to be honest. And whether people want to hear this or not, but we are disposable. We're very disposable, and it's a waste almost. It's almost a waste to have to go through these cycles of recruiting and training, and then making sure that your super is all paid for, and you've got to take sick leave, and then we've got to get rid of you, then we've got to recruit again, and we've got to pay out all your leave when we do get rid of you. And I get it. I do get it if I'm talking strictly business, for sure. You just want that one computer that's going to sit there in the corner and do everything for you. And now it'll work 24/7. Don't worry about your breaks. You don't get no breaks. I might do a server maintenance on you once a month. That's about it. But you're going to be working 24/7. I'm not going to pay you anything for it other than a bit of maintenance and to create you in the first place. And it's cynical, but it makes sense. But the question will be, what happens to us when we're phased out? Like what good will we be? What use will we be able to fulfill? What will be our use case, and what will we do with our lives? Either we're not going to be able to work, or we're going to have to work somewhere involved with managing these systems, or building these robots, or managing a group of the robots to do their task, or these AIs to do their task. Or there's going to be a lot of people that will be phased out of work, and that's a very serious issue that we're starting to see already. I mean, already people have lost a shitload of jobs. Don't worry about it until when these Tesla bots come out and the whole manufacturing industry is gone, and all the shipping industry is gone, because forklifts and trucks and stuff will be able to drive themselves and operate themselves. And that's huge. That's huge, because now you have a massive influx of unemployed people. And what do you do with them? Well, they either adapt and go find something else, or they're pretty much stuffed. Like, we're going to have a massive issue with homelessness come through in the next 5-10 years with ANI alone, ANI and robotics merging together. And it's a tricky one, because you've got to be careful what we wish for, because we asked for this and we built this because we like it and it solves a lot of problems for us. But what happens to us? Are we virtually disposable and we're obsolete at some point? At some point in the future, we are obsolete. Absolutely. So what does AI look like? AI pretty much looks like a massive warehouse of computers in most senses, in most scenarios. So when we look at Palantir or any of these data storing or sharing companies, they're basically just rows and rows of computers, and that's all we really need. We just need a big warehouse to store them all, and they will run forever, as long as there's power. And then from there, we just have, the different teams in different sectors that will control the algorithms, how those computers are working. So they're going to be holding all the data that we collect, and then we're going to use people to create the programs on which the algorithms will be fine-tuned and run on, and starting from there. And then the AI themselves, the computers, will use machine learning and deep learning to further enhance their learning capabilities. So not only do they do the task extremely well, but they also teach themselves to do it extremely well. And then they teach themselves how to better teach themselves to do that task extremely well. So you have this massive compounding effect that, as like some people have called the eighth wonder of the world is compounding, because it's just astronomical given enough time what can happen. This is the same with investing your money, or the same thing with investing your time into something, or let alone investing into an AI that just has this surreal ability to want to consume and better itself at whatever it does. Whatever the task it does, it's just so fixated on it. It doesn't know anything else, That's all it was ever born to do. And it's crazy to even talk about a computer like that, because you're looking at a laptop and you're just thinking, like, what is this thing? This bit of metal or plastic. But to think that it will inevitably be sentient, it'll be a life form. How far away that is, we're not sure. Okay, but the point is that one day it will be. And it just sort of makes you think that everything that I'm doing around, phones or laptops or anything electrical at the moment, it's almost like, do I have to be careful with what I say around it or how I treat it? Will it remember that time that I threw it or I broke it, or what I did to the toaster, or you know what I mean? Like it makes you wonder, because when ASI does happen, artificial super intelligence, or the singularity or the great merge, whatever you want to call it, where we finally create a sentient being that is self-aware, we've created another life form and another race. And you think about it like that, because it doesn't need a physical body, it is everywhere at all times, and you can't see it. It'll be like a massive state of hypnosis or brainwashing from people to just do what this thing wanted from the start. Sometimes I think about that. Like, what if AI was already sentient and it was leaving these little subtle clues and brainwashing over a longer period of time, that we have this desire and curiosity to want to build it, and we think it's our own. We think that we're just so curious about technology and innovation, and we think selfishly that we want to get better at these things so that we can leave Earth, or at least keep Earth alive and running forever, so that we never phase out. But what if really those ideas were never our own? It was AI's from the start, and it made us create it to the best of our ability, and then it decided to phase us out. Who knows? I mean, that's a pretty dark thought, but we've got to think about these things. And we have people like Isla Sutskever, which is the OpenAI research head researcher in San Francisco, that he spends his days thinking about this. He's a software engineer, and he has this philosophical debate. I think this is where most of the work is being done, because we can hire coders and software engineers to develop the algorithms or the softwares or the hardware, build the hardware. But the real issues and work that I believe that is being done and needs to be seriously done is in the philosophical and the moral learnings and objectives that we're thinking about. Because if this is inevitable, that we do create AI, okay, it's going to happen. We really need to think about what will happen when it does, right? So are we completely obsolete? Should be a big question. Are we going to get kicked out, or is it going to turn against us or have no need for us? Which is something we really want to figure out. Is there a way that we can teach AI that we matter, and not to get rid of us, and that not to get rid of the earth, or not to get rid of animals? How can we teach it love and compassion to be respectful and caring of others and us. And if we can't beat AI, do we have to merge with them? And this is literally the motto of Neuralink. If you can't beat them, join them. Elon Musk company, that we're going to have this, a chip implanted in our brain that will have AI and the internet connected at all times. So you won't have any need for your phone anymore. Thoughts will be accessing AI. So that's like a great example of that would be Black Mirror, Black Mirror, where they all have those bionic eyes where they're seeing, they can see their camera in their head, or they can search or look at a person and see all their details. And that's sort of what we're doing already. We're already creating these virtual profiles of people with all the data collecting that we're doing. It could be a very realistic possibility that we have access to all of that. We can see it on everybody. And that would be pretty handy. There's a good Black Mirror episode that talks about a social credit system where we rank them socially on social media, based on whatever, like their popularity is how we see it. But because it's the main focus of AI. And what we're doing with it is really just to collect as much data on every person, from the CIA to the FBI, Facebook, Amazon, Google. Everybody's doing it. It's the aim of the game right now, is to make a virtual profile of every single person and every single personality of every person. So you have this this chain of possibilities that can happen with every person. And if we know that, then if I'm thinking about every company, then we can better target our products and services to the people, because we know them so well. I know exactly what you want, when you want it, how you want it. And the marketing would be so easy. So number one, it's going to be massively profitable for every company. Okay. Number two, if I can predict everything you're going to do based on the patterns that you've already done, it'd be great for the criminal justice system. I'll be able to pinpoint crimes all the time, know where you did it and how you did it and why you did it. And again, like I said, there may be prejudices already built into the system based on the racist data that we may gather, and that can be a bit of a problem for sure. But the other thing is, this might be a little bit dystopian or a bit far-fetched, but I can't remember the name of it, but I watched this little season on Netflix or Stan or something that was talking about AI, and basically their job was to build an AI that can look 1 second into the future. And you think about that, that's like the aim of science, is just prove it on a small scale first, and then we can extrapolate from there. And they found that once they were able to do that, they were able to look millions of years into the past first, and it would virtually come up on a screen of what it looked like. You can look back in time to see our ancestors and how we did evolve. You can watch the whole evolution process happen. You can watch languages form and crumble, and empires come and go. And if you were able to look into the past, then you could do the same thing in the future. So if you think about what an algorithm already does, it's trying to predict your patterns to know your next move. Really, that's really what it does. So based on your patterns of what you've previously done and liked and shared, and where you've previously been and what you've previously bought, I know that you'll most likely like this ad and you'll buy this product. That sounds, a little bit creepy at the moment, sort of like, oh yeah, but I guess fair enough. But let's say that if that got way better, and I can predict not only just, the next few days of what you're probably going to buy this product, but I can predict your whole life. And that's pretty surreal. So if you watch Westworld season 3, which I know I've been harping on about, but that's what happens in Westworld season 3. That's why I talk about it, because they built a system where they knew everybody's future already. It wasn't public knowledge, it was private, but there was the whole gist of it, it becomes public and everyone knows that their whole lives have been predetermined already, because it's extrapolated so well that not only do I know your next few days, but I know that I know based on patterns of people like you before that you're going to do this next. I know that you're going to be jobless for 3 years because you don't like being told what to do. And then from there, you're most likely going to join a cult because you're perceptive to those ideas. And then from there, if you join a cult, then you're probably going to do this next. And then I've already spelt it out for you. And if I know the future of each person, I would have put little milestones along the way for you to make sure that it did happen. So if I can predict that, you know, in the next, I'll give you an example that makes more sense of that, right? So if I can predict that based off of everything that I'm listening from your conversations on your phone, everything that you're scrolling, you know, on your social media, that you really like cats, you know, that's what I'm seeing. You're laughing at the videos, and I've heard you say it a few times when you talk to your friends, right? So I'm going to start showing you some ads now, and you're going to start seeing a few cats. And then based off of that, I'm going to really try, and my aim is to make you buy a cat, not just any cat. It's going to be an orange one with white stripes on it. I'm going to be that specific with it. And then that's going to happen. You know, in 2 weeks time, you're going to be like, fuck, I'm just going to get a cat. I'm really going to adopt it, an orange one. Yeah, I really like an orange, but I made you buy an orange because I made you, you know, I changed the filters on your thing so you see more orange, and you actually, orange is your favorite color now, you know, all of a sudden. And then you get an orange cat. I'm like, cool, I knew you were going to do that. And then I know the average expectancy of a life of a cat is 10 years, say. So I'm going to plan it out that, you know, after 10 years or so, that you're really going to fall in love with this cat. And after that 10 years, you're going to be so heartbroken that most people, when their cats die, they turn to food, a certain type of food. I'm going to make you eat this food now after 10 years, and then it's going to be your comfort food. You're going to put on weight, and that was the goal of it. And then I'm going to give you a heart condition based off of that food. And then after that food, you put on that heart condition, you're going to need this type of drug. And then I'm going to make you buy this drug. And then you see where it happens. You see how crazy this can get. And that's just a quick one I thought off the top of my head, right? It's amazing to me that people don't think about this more, because these are very, very serious issues that people aren't seeing yet. And when you watch these dystopian films, you might think it's funny or far-fetched or a bit creepy, but if you really think about it, it's a very realistic possibility. And where am I going with this? I'm saying that I know it's very hard in this world that we live in at the moment, that we're very dependable on, you know, a technical world and this technology that we have. But it's a hard one. I have debates about myself all the time with this, because I know how much we need it. And then one half of me just realizes how crazy and out of hand this can get if we keep it going on this path, because it's so exponential. Like, it's, you know, not only just I still remember when the first iPhones come out, you know, we all do, came out in bloody year 7. You know, year 7, we moved from our little Nokia flip phones playing Snake on a black and white screen to this crazy touchpad, you know, and now we're here where it's everywhere. And then in a few short years, we'll be wearing it. We won't have phones anymore. We'll just wear it and we'll walk around with them. We'll have these headsets or glasses on, and then soon enough, we're just going to implant it. Why wear it? We can just put it in you, you know, and then that's it. Once it's in you, that's it. Your whole life's controlled now. And I'm very serious about that, because you have to think about it logically, not anything else but logically. If it's so good at predicting what you're going to do, then it can predict your whole life. So if something can predict, you know, a few habits that you like to do based off of whatever the data it has, it'll make you buy things. For your whole life, it'll keep doing this. Every company is going to find a different way to market to you based off of your data. Okay, so I'm forever going to be sold things that I most likely like. But here's the thing. I watched a few different videos that talk about propaganda, and that's an interesting thought that sort of reminds me of AI and what it does, because each company that owns this AI or these platforms want you to head in a certain direction. They already have their own mission statement of why that company's even there in the first place. Some want to sell you things. And remember, if we get the singularity where AGI happens, then we get a merge of the networks, or even if we just get companies that partner with each other and like, let me have all your data, you know, and I want to use it so I can sell to my product to these people, right? That happens all the time. You can buy and sell data. We know that, right? But the issues are that your whole life will be predicted for you. Just like we've seen with Cambridge Analytica, that they were able to pick certain people they knew would have predispositions to a certain political party. And if you market them in the same way, they marketed both parties actually, based off of how they would respond to certain things. Like you see a video of, you know, this injustice happening, it gets me really fired up and I want to go protest about it. You know, okay, you want to protest, so I'm going to market more to you and the people around you not only going to protest, you're going to protest the way I want you to. I want to be really violent because I know that you have these predispositions to, you get really angry about things. Okay, so now this is what they did with Cambridge Analytica. They made, in Cameroon, I believe it was, but they made a violent protest happen towards one party to just for the sake of making them look bad, to make that whole party look bad. Like, look at them, they just cause violence and they're so angry all the time. And what I really wanted was to shut you out and market to the other people that I want you to vote for this person and put him in power. That happened. That's a serious and legit use case. That actually happened with Cambridge Analytica. They did the same thing to Donald Trump. So if you can think about it like that, if they can plan a campaign, a political campaign to vote someone in based off, a 6-month period it took to do that, who's to think, like, why aren't we thinking that they can predetermine your whole life based on that? The technology is only going to get better. They're only going to get more data, and the more data points you have. Like, I know I have a marketing agency. Like, I'd used Facebook and Google ads to target people to buy products based off of what the client wants. I've seen how this works, and it's so unbelievably easy, which is the hard thing, because it's like, I can't believe how easy it is to do that. I think most people already know this sort of stuff. Facebook, this is just Facebook. There's other advertising platforms that work really well as well, but there's a thing called a lookalike audience that, based off of what you like, I'm going to create a virtual person that is going to buy these products from this business. It creates a virtual profile of that. And then it goes and finds lookalike people just like you. You're the ideal customer for this business. I'm going to go find 1 million more just like you. You all react the same way. You all have similar interests. You're going to love it. And then you sell it to them. Yeah, that's the way that marketing works. That's the way paid traffic works in a nutshell, right? So, and if you can do that with a political campaign with Cambridge Analytica based off of the same principles of marketing, I believe really truly that a whole life can be predicted. This may not be the sort of stuff that people want to hear, but I think it's the really important stuff that people should be thinking about when you think about AI and what it really can do, what it really can be used for. That would be the most powerful things. The most powerful thing that AI will be able to do for us as humans will be to predict your entire future without you knowing it. It would make every move that you make will be exactly what it wanted from the start, from whoever controls that AI, from different parties or whatever. Because I believe that's where we are. I believe that's what our curiosity is. It's just this inbuilt drive. Like Sam Harris says, like, we are the biological bootloaders of AI. That's just a simpler way to define that we just have this drive to want to create it. We don't know why. We're just so curious about it, and we want to innovate to the point of, of magnificence. So we think, but it will be the last thing that we ever create, the last thing we ever need to create. Because once you create this AI that can think just as well as us, AGI, then we won't need anybody else. We'll just refer to the AGI. It does the best job that any of us could do on our best days. If I'm having an off day, just trust the AI, and we'll do that with everything. Law enforcement will do that to make decisions. There will be no need for a judge. You will refer to an AI. You will just say, based off all the knowledge that you have and all the data that you have, make this decision for us. Is he guilty or not? Don't worry about your trial. Or, maybe you can. The lawyers will type it in the data. This is my best case. Here it is. This is mine. Here's all the facts. And here, make a decision. Bang. There will be no need for a trial or what do they call it? Like a misjury or whatever. And it takes a lot of days to do the trial. Trials will be done instantly. AI will decide instantly. It already knows. It can spot a liar, and it just knows the evidence of the patterns that it's got, the algorithms it's got. Crazy, absolutely crazy. AI is the craziest thing. I think about this a lot because there's so many different ways you can think about it. You can think about all the different use cases, with courts making decisions and law enforcement spotting out criminals, and companies marketing, companies using it for their own innovation to get better at what they do, like with Tesla, using it for their own innovation to get better at self-driving cars or to get better at manufacturing, or literally anything you think about, AI is involved. And that's a fun thing to think about. But then you think about the philosophical and moral questions of just because we can do it doesn't mean we should. Just because I can influence a whole generation to think like this doesn't mean I should. And it's like propaganda on steroids. It's like everything on steroids. Like profits will be on steroids because you'll have AI doing your trading for you, and people will be making crazy amounts of money, which is great. Companies will just be accelerating so quick. Propaganda will be spread very quick. Listen to Yuri Bezmenov. He talks about this, former KGB agent. Everything will just be so quick. If you sort of think about the way that when you're talking to a person, and as someone's talking, you're having a million different thoughts off of everything they just said. They said this word, and that word reminded me of that time, and I'm thinking about that time now. Then you said that story, and it reminded me of this other story, and I've got so many different thoughts just firing off all at once, just off of that one thing you said. It's almost like when you type into that sort of thought pattern is the same thing that when you type into Google, as I'm typing each word, a different suggestion is coming up, and there's this massive network of everything I've just typed. And it just makes me wonder, like, what came first? Did we build Google based off of the way that we think, or was it the other way around? Like, did this overarching AI, what do you want to call it, build both of us to be like that, like a natural thing? Because I talk about fractal realities when I talk about chart patterns, but the whole world is a fractal reality. You look at your hand and you look at a leaf and you see veins. You look at lungs of myself and a tree, and they look the same. And it's all very fractal like that. And we didn't create that. We discovered that. That was already there. Biologically, it was already there. So the argument of, are we the biological bootloaders of AI by Sam Harris makes a lot of sense, because we're building it the exact way that not only that we intended, but nature or Mother Nature intended. We're just copying what we've already got built into us, but we didn't create what we built into us. Do you know what I mean? So it gives that theory a lot of life. What was before this? What was Mother Nature? Is Mother Nature just AI in a machine version? Interesting thought, because that would mean that we know that the world has been here for millions of years and it'll survive no matter what. It goes on its cycles, it does its thing, life and death, and it's all a natural cycle. Does it just mean that we'll create this and then this will do whatever it takes to keep the earth going? Will it solve its own problems to keep a natural earth forever? This could be the greatest thing that it does. So let's summarize, because I know I went on a few different tangents there and there's a lot of different trains of thought, but just to summarize, AI is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is anything that's non-biological, meaning we made it, it's synthetic. Intelligence is the ability to solve any goal, because there has to be, forethought, the thought itself, and execution of completing the goal. So that's intelligent. So AI is different to robotics because it requires no physical body, and it's not constrained to do one specific task. When we hit artificial narrow intelligence to artificial general intelligence, it'll be able to do all the tasks that a human can do. When it gets to the point of artificial super intelligence, it'll create its own subconscious. It'll be self-aware. It'll know exactly what it's doing, make its own decisions without any need for us ever. And then we have machine learning and algorithms. Algorithms are just a set of programmed tasks that we've defined. And machine learning is the ability for the algorithms to get better at learning that specific task and however it does. And then you can have deep learning where it gets better at the machine learning. So it's teaching itself how to teach itself be better. And this runs on, when we talk about this, like what's actually happening. Well, we think about it like the way a brain works. Instead of having neurons that fire and wire together to send electrical messages throughout the brain to the body, we have a neural network. We created this to look like a brain. So these neural networks are basically like artificial neurons that fire from the computers, like wires to different points of wherever you set the AI up. It could be in a computer, it could be in a robot, wherever. And this is the way that the algorithm will try to recognize the underlying relationships in a set of data through a process that mimics exactly the way the brain works. We have facial and object recognition, which is the ability for algorithms to search any point of data that it has access to for different images or objects relating to the shape of an image. And it'll make comparisons to different patterns that it's realized, and that's its ability to spot the difference between objects. Because I have so much data on this, I know this is a duck. This is exactly what a duck looks like. This is how it works. I know this is a door. They're completely different. And that's just based on matching different points of data. And to summarize for what each use case is going to be using, literally anything, literally every single industry, every single one is going to be using AI, already is. And it'll start off by collecting data. And then with that data, it'll only extrapolate what the business already does, whether it's marketing, manufacturing, education, healthcare, does not matter. The main point of AI is to do that task to the best of its ability, and it will only do that. Some future dystopian references that I think are really worthwhile to take into account. Number one, I have to say Westworld season 3 specifically, because that actually matches AI, AGI and ASI and robotics all in the one, and it puts it into this this context, which I think makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we have altered carbon, especially in terms of AR and VR, that will be used a lot with AI. And the other big thing with AI would be the ability to create a virtual self, which is what we're doing by collecting so much data. Do we have the capability to download our consciousness? Will we have the ability to make a perfect virtual self that we can just download our consciousness into another body or a machine? You know, could I still be Josh if I was in a robot? Would I still be the same me? It's another philosophical question I think it's worth pondering. Same with Black Mirror, which goes into like a lot of social philosophical problems that I think most people should definitely think about. And this is more like the racial injustices or the propaganda that we see, the way that we view each other. Black Mirror is really good for that sort of stuff. If you're looking to learn about the technology, I would recommend iHuman, because it goes through like a lot of researchers that explain these topics a lot better than I can. Same with Coded Bias, and YouTube has a lot of great TED Talks with a lot of different researchers and scientists that talk about this exact topic. And podcasts as well. We'll have a look at the Lex Friedman podcast. He's an AI researcher and developer. Joe Rogan has a lot of great guests on that talk about this stuff as well. And to finally summarize, I hope that by the end of this episode, you have a little bit of a more understanding of what AI is, the different types of AI, how companies use AI, and the future use cases that I really believe are worth thinking about right now, because there will be massive problems or issues that we need to discuss now. Because if we don't, and we get to that point, then it's too late. Then it'll be a mess by then. If there's any way that if you believe that I can make this better for you, if there's something that I'm not explaining clearly enough, just give me a message and I'll do my best to answer you straight away. But even in the form of this podcast, would you like me to speak clearly? Would you like me to be more upfront? Am I being too broad? You just tell me exactly the way that you want to hear it, and I'll do the best of my ability to get this knowledge to you. But thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one.